DHG here, and I'm doing my review of Resident Evil 2. This is, of course, the updated and patched one that includes the ray tracing, which I did get to play here. Let me start the video. I personally find that ray tracing looks better with reflections mainly. The whole global illumination thing, I can't point it out. But in typical review fashion, I'm going to be hitting the 8 same points I always do, and just extrapolating as I go through them. First off, my rating on the game's great. Great's only reserved for those games. The only other great rating I gave was Elden Ring, and that's every gamer's got to play them. This would serve as an entry point to get you into the survival horror genre, and it's a perfect example of what it can be when they actually hit all their marks. For graphics, which is the first order I'm discussing, I mean, it's one of the most well-funded AAA titles out there in terms of survival horror. The graphics are great, and the team behind Resident Evil created their own game engine for Resident Evil 7, and then they furthered it with this, and it's just stellar looking. It's called the RE engine. It's absolutely phenomenal. So you're not going to have any complaints about the graphics. They are as realistic as they can get. Even back on the PlayStation 4, it looked freaking great. Controls. I was kind of curious how they were going to pull this off, because the old Resident Evil games, specifically 1, 2, 3, 4 changed it up a bit with a different perspective, but they were fixed camera, tank controls. Controls were always a problem. So I was kind of curious to see how they take the old fixed camera perspective with the tank controls and put it into a 3D space game like this. They made it work well. Of course, they're no pioneers in this field. This has been done for, shit, they did it with Resident Evil 4. They just pulled the camera back a little bit for this game. Whereas, in Resident Evil 4, it's directly over Leon's shoulder. The controls aren't overly complicated. It's nothing like Red Dead Redemption, where there's a lot of nuanced controls that you might forget if you haven't played in a while. This is all pretty easy. It's very easy to pick up and start playing. Start getting your zombie killing on. With the gameplay, this goes back, it's kind of like a mix between the new and the old. They realized that when they were recreating such an old game, oogling right there, when they were recreating such an old game, they realized not of a lot of the conventions of back then were going to hold up today, and this was further pronounced when I played through a game recently. I didn't finish it, so don't expect to find a review on it. But it was a game that went back to the old, Silent Hill, Resident Evil type days back of PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 1, where they didn't give you any indication of where to go on the map. No hints, nothing. That's how the old Resident Evils used to be. So if you didn't play in maybe 2 days or so, you're going to load into a game and you're going to go, where the hell was I? You're going to waste a lot of time just dicking around and going from point A to point B until you're like, oh yeah, how do I forget that? This lets you know where you're at and where the progress is. You can figure it out within maybe 5 minutes, depending on what's in your inventory. If you're no longer using a particular item, you just discard it and go on. They make it very easy to keep your forward momentum in the game going. And the different systems that they put in with the inventory, the weapons, the crafting items, they all work very well. They're all kind of minimalistic, but I would hate to see them try to flesh that out more, because I don't really feel it's necessary in a game like this. The sound is very good. When they need to make it explosive, bombastic, and then they start kicking the music in the boss fights, like when William Birkin starts attacking you with that giant lead pipe of his, it really kicks. The explosions are good. They're not so overly loud like the, what's what I'm looking for? The dynamic range. The quiets are very quiet, but the louds are also very loud. It is by default somewhat quieter than most games, though, so you might have to turn it up a couple extra notches, but whoop-de-doo. The music, largely absent. There's not really a lot of ambient music in this game that is present in games like Elder Scrolls, um, The Witcher, if you play games like that. This follows with a survival horror format of kind of like an eerie, quiet background where you can hear, things breathing and things going bump in the night and all that stuff. And it works very well. They kick the music in when they have to. And the music isn't, I wouldn't really say it's really great, but it's not distracting either. Some of the music is very good, like later on in the game. The story, they kept the story to the minimum here. They didn't go with the, considering this is a remake that came out in, I think it was 2018. They realized the mistakes they made with Resident Evil 6. And you see a lot of even TV shows fall into this trap where they just make it so big that it's unbelievable. This stays local. This is like where Resident Evil 1, even Resident Evil 3, they keep it small, they keep it believable, as how zombies are believable. But it's something very easy to wrap your head around. The story opens up more as you go through the game, which is par for the course. But they don't do anything completely like Resident Evil 6 like where you think all this stuff's unfolding over the world. No, they keep it right here within this police station and the umbrella facilities you get to later on. They do it all very well. The story's intriguing enough to make you want to go, I want to see what happens in the next installment. Stability and bugs. I haven't had a single crash in this game. I'm playing it on PC. When I played through it on PS4, I didn't have a crash on it either, so I don't expect you to have a crash playing on Xbox or Xbox Series X or PS5, should you play it on those platforms. With bugs, the only bug I noticed was occasional ragdoll effects going a little wonky, and when I first started playing the game, I didn't show it in this playthrough, but if you go back and look at my very first gameplay video with Leon's, the headlights, and sometimes if you walk by something where a flashlight is, I was using SMAA as my anti-aliasing, and later I switched it over to TAA and FXAA. When I was using SMAA, the headlights seemed almost overly bright, like a flashlight was shining right in your eyes. It looks strange and out of place. I hope they fix it eventually, because I can't stand TAA. It makes everything blurry. But the solution is just turn off SMAA. Of course, if you're playing on consoles, they use TAA anyway, so you don't have to worry about that, but those are just minor gripes. It's neither really here nor there. In opinions, I don't really have any, except for I think everyone needs to play this game if they haven't already, which, given some of the people I talk to on a daily basis, there's quite a bit of them. And that's my review for this game, Resident Evil 2, no matter what version you play, except for the old PlayStation, 1 version. The remake, great across the board.